Ballerina is out now, and even though it's not a perfect movie, it's still a worthy entry into the John Wick franchise and could be a start to a brand new trilogy. So let's talk about it. But as always, before we get started, if you're new here, my name is Aaron and I talk all things movies and TV, but really mostly movies. So if you're into that sort of thing, go ahead and hit that subscribe button for me. It would be greatly appreciated on my end. And while you're at it, if you like my videos, hit that like button as well. And of course, if you've seen the movie, let me know your thoughts on it down below in the comments. But without further ado, let's talk about Ballerina. Now, this was one of my most anticipated movies of this year, but I also was a little bit worried about this thing because it did get delayed to this year. I think it was originally supposed to come out last year. Plus, this is the John Wick franchise that we're talking about. It is probably one of the best action franchises of the past decade, so it has a lot to live up to. But after seeing this, I think this movie holds its own and is another strong entry into this franchise. And if they decided to make a trilogy out of this, I wouldn't be mad. So this movie takes place in between the events of John Wick 3 and 4, and in this we follow Ana de Armas's character named Eve, and after the death of her father as a kid, she joins the Ruska Roma to train, and later as an adult sets out to get revenge on those responsible for her father's death. Jumping right into the good, and the first thing I have here is of course Ana de Armas. She is absolutely amazing in this thing, and she carries this movie. And I think this is the most physical role that she has done, and she kills it both figuratively and, well, literally as well. I know she did a lot of training to prepare for this role so that she could do most of her stunts in this thing, and it paid off because she is just a lot of fun to watch in this thing. Not only in the action scenes, but also in the scenes where she had to be a little bit more emotional as well. She was just an overall force on screen during this movie. I also liked how she wasn't just a carbon copy female version of John Wick. Yes, the thirst for revenge was still there, but this movie makes it very clear that she is no John Wick. Due to her size, she's going to have to fight a little bit differently. She's not always going to win those straight up hand-to-hand combat fights. She's going to have to use weapons, different objects, and exploit her enemy's weakness, and that just led to a different fighting style, but it also made it believable that she could take down these grown men that are bigger and stronger than her. And that led to some pretty fun and creative action scenes. So yes, this movie made it clear that she is no John Wick, but it also made it clear that she is very capable and is not to be messed with in any way, shape, or form. But on top of the physical part of this role, there are also moments where she had to be a little bit more emotional, and of course, she did a great job at that as well. She was very much her own character in this thing, and I love this new character of Eve that we got introduced to in this movie. And I've said this before, but with the way this movie ended, I definitely would not mind getting a trilogy with Ana de Armas because she absolutely proved that she can be an action star in this movie. Next up for the good is that, well, this is a movie that takes place in the John Wick universe, so I simply just can't talk about this film without talking about how good the action was. And the action in this film is as good as it's ever been in this franchise. I would say the action we got in this is pretty on par with what we got in John Wick 4, which pretty much is just me saying, yes, this action absolutely rocks. And if there's one thing this franchise just continues to do a great job at, that is finding new and creative ways to keep this action fresh and exciting. There were multiple times in this movie where I would see an action sequence and be like, man, that's probably gonna be my favorite action sequence in this movie. And it was until we got to the next action sequence. And then I was like, oh, I think that's gonna be my new favorite. And this process pretty much continued throughout this entire movie until we got to the end. This thing is non-stop action all the way through, and I'm not exaggerating when I say this, but as this movie goes on, this action somehow gets better and better. I mean, she went from using rubber bullets to knives to all sorts of guns. There was one where she was just straight up using grenades because that's the only thing she had, and that sequence was absolutely awesome. Then we had swords, and then she put a knife on the end of a gun and was stabbing and shooting people. Don't know how that works, but it was awesome. And then we finally get to the end of this film and we get that flamethrower fight that was shown in the trailers, and that may be one of the coolest things I've ever seen this franchise do. Everything from the way these action scenes were shot to the fight choreography within them was just 10 out of 10 awesome. I loved every second of it, and these action scenes, especially the ones that we got in the third act, are worth the price of admission by themselves. Moving on to the so-so, and the first thing I have here is our John Wick cameo. Now, given that Keanu Reeves was a big part of the marketing of this movie, that kind of worried me because it felt like they were relying on his cameo to really get people in seats and get people interested in this movie, and that just felt like they didn't trust this movie to stand on its own. But after watching this, I can happily say that I was wrong on that front. Now, they definitely used John Wick to get butts in seats and sell tickets, but one could make the argument that he just wasn't really needed in this film and didn't have to be in it because of what we got from Ana de Armas. Now look, I will never say no to a Keanu Reeves John Wick cameo because I am a fan of this franchise and John Wick, and I don't think I will ever get tired of watching John Wick movies. Plus, I do really like how they incorporated him in this movie because we got way more from him than just a fight between him and Ana de Armas. But with that said, the more I think about it, the more I feel like that fight between the two, even though it was really cool, wasn't really needed at the end of the day. In the moment, it does kind of feel like this movie pauses so these two can have a face-off, and that in turn made this movie feel a little bit longer than it needed to be. Plus, all the momentum that this movie had been building up until this point kind of gets put on pause for a second there as well. Now, that momentum does pick up again pretty quickly after they have their little face-off, but I just feel like everything we had gotten from this movie leading up to that point was plenty strong enough to stand on its own without John Wick. We got a nice little cameo from Keanu Reeves in the first hour of this film that kind of lets us know when the events of this movie are taking place, and honestly, that's all the John Wick that this movie needed. Don't get me wrong, I love what we got from John Wick in this movie, and I'm not saying that they should take him out of this film, but what I am saying is I think this movie would have been just as good if the only thing we got from him was that brief little cameo in the first hour of the movie. Next up for the so-so is that story-wise, this doesn't really do anything different from the other John Wick movies. It's your typical revenge story. It's very similar to the first movie where someone or something that the main character loves gets killed, and then our main character goes after those responsible to, well, get revenge. This is something we've seen not only in this franchise, but a million times before in other action movies, so story-wise, it doesn't really reinvent the wheel in any way. But these movies have never been about the story, it's all about the action, and this movie 100% exceeds in that category, and at the end of the day, that's really all that matters when it comes to these John Wick movies. And finally, getting into the bad, and the only thing I have here is that it did take this movie a sec to really find its footing and its flow. I would say maybe the first 30-ish minutes of this thing, we were focused on the training of Ana de Armas while she was still with the Rusko Roma, and that part of the movie was fine. I didn't have a problem with it per se, but it did feel like it was still trying to figure itself out in those first 30 minutes of the movie. And honestly, after we got our first like big action sequence with Ana de Armas when she was saving someone, I was still kind of worried about this film because I wasn't too intrigued with what I had seen so far. But once that revenge plot really kicked in, this thing found its footing, it found its flow, and I was locked in for the rest of the movie because everything we got from there on out was awesome. So overall, yes, I think this is a worthy entry into the John Wick franchise. It's led by a great performance from Ana de Armas and has tons of creative action sequences that are a lot of fun to watch. It expands this John Wick world and leaves you wanting more, so this is a movie that I would definitely recommend you go see. Those are my thoughts on Ballerina. Be sure to let me know what you thought of the movie down in the comments, and as always, be sure to like, subscribe, comment, get your Eazy Apparel at shopeasyapparel.com. God bless, and I'll see you guys later. Peace.